Chapter 1. That's My Name.
Brown, he said. Meet a NOPD Detective Lieutenant Paseo over at the city park. Wisner and Harrison. They want you there ASAP.
Who is they?
God damn it. I just told you who they was. They is a him. Now get moving, he shouted.
I have been with the United States Marshal Service since graduating from college. I was 22 back then. And from as far back as I can remember, the service has been bouncing me around from district to district since I joined up. And that was almost 10 years ago. My boss is a real jerk, but nothing that I can't handle. After all, he's a man, and I look damn good in a pencil skirt. I'm not at all against the idea of playing around with older men, and if I were to give him half the chance, I think he'd be willing to break every fraternization policy that the federal government owns for a few hours of playtime. But fucking the boss has never proven to be a good career move. And since I plan to be here for a while, I don't try to give my bosses any off-the-clock thought patterns. Besides, when a woman gives up that ass, she loses a part of herself to whomever she deems fortunate enough to enjoy the thrill ride. And for me, those rides aren't given away very easy. My name is Dakota Nikisha Brown, and I am employed as a Deputy United States Marshal. As a kid, I grew up in Detroit. My granny raised me because both of my parents were killed. No, it didn't happen by some random act of fate. Not for my parents. They didn't die in a car accident like normal people who would make their kid an orphan. My parents were two of the most infamous people to have ever resided in the state of New York, and together, they went out the hard way. My mother in a hail of bullets, and my dad with a life sentence in state prison. My father was Nino Brown, the founder, CEO, president, chairman of the board, and all-around head nigga in charge of the Cash Money Brothers, otherwise known as the CMB. But my mother, Keisha Jackson, was the only true female member of the CMB. This business was one of the largest and most well-connected drug distribution organizations in the Big Apple, and perhaps the entire country. My daddy had about 50 loyal followers within the criminal enterprise, including my mom. She was only 13 years old when my daddy got her pregnant. And though they were never a real couple, where I was concerned, they provided to me the best of everything. In the public domain, nobody outside of their small family circles even knew that I existed. But I imagine it was for my own protection. Even after they lost their lives to prison or crime-related shootouts, we discovered that they had stashed away enough money to ensure that I would never want for much of anything. My dad was a super dark-complexioned man with a very good athletic build, and a zero tolerance level for disloyalty. As a young girl, I used to love the way that my dad would smile down at me. His teeth were so white against the backdrop of his dark skin that they seemed to glow. That's really all that I can actually remember about him. I mean, other than the normal stuff like him being around for Christmas and birthdays. My father and mother had more of a business relationship than they had of a love interest. In fact, my mother was in charge of my father's security force. Imagine that. Honestly, as a teenager, I came to realize that I was nothing more than the product of two young kids experimenting with sex. Yeah, I can still remember my dad kissing my sleeping forehead as he left our apartment during the early hours of a few mornings. His overnight stays didn't happen very often, and my mama never had another man in her bed. At least none that I can recall. So, I'm pretty sure that where my parents were concerned, my daddy was the only man that my mother had ever intimately known. As far as the sheets in our house, anyways. Mama was about 5'7". She religiously wore 4-inch heels, which always made her slender frame appear to be even taller than she actually was. She wasn't as dark as my father. Hell, not even the middle of the night is as dark as my father was. Actually, my mother was what I would describe as honey tone. I didn't quite inherit her complexion, nor did I his. And I'm not as tall as she stood. In fact, I'm only 5'2". but I do have her slim, curvaceous body type. I also acquired my mother's great sense of fashion. On more than one occasion, it has been suggested that I dress more like a runway model than I do a federal cop. My granny was my heart and soul, right up until the day of her death. Granny was a real church lady and always encouraged me to do better than your parents. Like I said, my mother and father left me plenty of money, but my granny always said that money won't show you respect in the mirror. I guess she meant that self-respect can't be measured by what you have in your pockets, but how you acquired what you have in your pockets. And for some, her philosophy had merit. But to those with little or no heart, it's just a bunch of fancy words. On the day that I graduated from Spelman College, I decided to join the U.S. Marshal Service in order to prove to my granny that in spite of having my parents' genes, as well as their appetite for the good life, that I would always remain on the right side of the law. Granny had always been the bedrock of my sanity, and I really wanted her last days on this side of the living to be completely worry-free. So here I am, a Deputy United States Marshal,